He is called a genius, a visionary, the man who changed electric cars, who made reusable rockets a reality, who wants to put humans on Mars. Yet, millions of people can't stand him. How can one man be celebrated as the future of humanity and criticized as one of the most controversial people on Earth? Was it the companies he built, the things he says online, the way he treats employees, his politics, or is there something much bigger happening? Love him or hate him, it's almost impossible to ignore him. Every tweet sparks headlines. Every interview starts debates. Every business decision moves billions of dollars. Every success creates more admirers. Every mistake creates even more critics. But here's the strange part. Many of the people who criticize Elon Musk still drive his cars, still use technology influenced by his companies, still follow everything he does. So, who is Elon Musk really? A brilliant innovator pushing humanity forward? A billionaire blinded by power? A misunderstood entrepreneur? Or simply one of the most polarizing figures of the 21st century? To answer that question, we have to go back to the beginning, before the wealth, before the rockets, before Tesla, before the fame, to a quiet boy growing up in South Africa who had no idea he would one day become one of the most admired and most criticized people on the planet. This is the story of why so many people hate Elon Musk and why just as many people believe he's changing the future. To understand why Elon Musk became one of the most admired and most criticized people in the world, you first have to forget everything you think you know about him. Forget the billions of dollars, forget the rockets, forget the electric cars, forget the headlines, because none of those things existed when this story began. Travel back to the early 1970s, to the city of Pretoria, South Africa, a place of quiet suburban neighborhoods, strict schools, and a country living through a deeply divided period in its history. It was here, on June 28, 1971, that Elon Reeve Musk was born. From the outside, there was nothing to suggest this quiet little boy would one day become one of the most recognizable people on Earth. Unlike many children his age, Elon wasn't known for being loud or outgoing. He preferred something else. Books. Lots of them. He read for hours. Sometimes so long that people around him thought he wasn't paying attention. But he was. He was simply lost inside another world. Science fiction, fantasy, history, encyclopedias. If there was something to learn, he wanted to understand it. Those closest to him have described him as deeply curious, not the kind of curiosity that disappears after a few minutes, but the kind that refuses to let go until every question has an answer. He wasn't satisfied with knowing that something worked. He wanted to know why it worked, and then whether it could work even better. That way of thinking made him different. Sometimes very different. School wasn't always easy. Elon has spoken publicly about being bullied as a child. According to his own accounts, he was frequently targeted by other students. There were days he dreaded going to school, days when the classroom felt easier than the playground. Instead of trying to become popular, he escaped into ideas. While other children spent hours playing outside, Elon often disappeared into books, imagining distant planets, new inventions, and futures that didn't exist yet. Then, something happened that would quietly change the course of his life. At around the age of 10, he discovered computers. At a time when home computers were still a novelty for many families, Elon became fascinated by what they could do. Without formal classes, he began teaching himself computer programming. Hour after hour, line after line, he learned by reading manuals, experimenting, making mistakes, and trying again. Not because anyone told him to, because he genuinely wanted to know how software worked. Before long, he wasn't just using computers, he was creating with them. At just 12 years old, he wrote a simple space-themed video game called Blastar, and sold its source code to a computer magazine. The amount of money wasn't life-changing, but the idea was. For the first time, something that existed only in his imagination had become something real. It was a small achievement, one that few people noticed, but looking back, it hinted at a pattern that would define much of his life. Imagine something that doesn't exist, figure out how to build it, and convince others that it's possible. Still, at that point, there were no billion-dollar companies, no launch pads, no factories, no global fame, just a quiet teenager with an unusually active imagination, trying to understand how the world worked. But there was one problem. The future he imagined wasn't in South Africa, and before long, he would make a decision that would change the rest of his life forever. For Elon, the dream wasn't simply to become successful. It was to go where he believed the future was being built, and that place wasn't South Africa. As a teenager, he became increasingly convinced that if he wanted to build technology capable of changing the world, he needed to leave. But walking away from the country where you were born is never a simple decision, especially when you're still young. In the late 1980s, South Africa required mandatory military service for many young white men. Rather than stay, Elon chose a different path. Through his mother's Canadian citizenship, he set his sights on Canada. It wasn't because Canada was the final destination. It was because it offered a pathway to something even bigger, the United States, the place he believed led the world in technology, engineering, and innovation. In 1989, at just 17 years old, Elon left South Africa. He wasn't leaving as a millionaire. He wasn't carrying investors, business plans, or revolutionary inventions. He was simply a young man chasing an opportunity. Like many immigrants, the beginning wasn't glamorous. He took temporary jobs to support himself. He worked wherever work was available, sometimes doing physically demanding labor, sometimes working long hours, simply to keep moving forward. There were no cameras following him, no interviews, no headlines, just uncertainty and determination. Eventually, he enrolled at Queen's University in Ontario. For 2 years, he studied, met lifelong friends, and continued thinking about the future. But even then, his ambitions stretched far beyond earning a university degree. He believed the biggest technological revolutions were still ahead, and he wanted to be part of them. Later, he transferred to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. There, he earned degrees in physics and economics, an unusual combination. One focused on understanding how the universe works, the other on understanding how businesses succeed. Friends from that time have described him as intensely driven. While many students enjoyed campus life, Elon often talked about ideas, the internet, renewable energy, space exploration, technology that could change civilization itself. At the time, those conversations sounded wildly ambitious. The internet was still in its early days. Electric cars were dismissed by many as unrealistic. Private companies launching rockets into space sounded like science fiction. But to Elon, these weren't impossible dreams. They were simply problems waiting to be solved. After graduating, he was accepted into a PhD program in applied physics at Stanford University. For many people, that would have been the destination. Years of study, followed by a stable academic career. But something unexpected happened. Just 2 days after arriving, he walked away. The internet boom had begun. Every day, new companies were appearing. New ideas were changing the world almost overnight. Elon believed staying in a classroom meant watching history happen from the sidelines. He wanted to build it. So, he made one of the biggest gambles of his life. He dropped out. No guarantee of success, no safety net. No certainty that anything would work, just a belief that the future belonged to those willing to take extraordinary risks. Together with his brother Kimball, he started his first company, a small software business called Zip2. The office was modest. Money was scarce. According to accounts from that period, there were times when the brothers worked incredibly long hours. They wrote software during the day, continued late into the night, and sometimes slept at the office rather than rent a proper apartment. The goal wasn't comfort, it was survival. Slowly, their software began attracting customers, then more customers, then investors started paying attention. For the first time, the gamble seemed to be paying off. But Elon wasn't thinking about retirement. He wasn't even thinking about slowing down, because for him, Zip 2 was never the destination. It was only the beginning. The real risks were still ahead. By the late 1990s, the gamble had finally paid off. Zip 2, the small software company Elon and his brother had built from almost nothing, was acquired. For the first time in his life, Elon Musk was a millionaire. For most people, that would have been the finish line. Financial freedom, a comfortable life. No more sleeping in offices, no more wondering how to pay the bills. But Elon wasn't interested in comfort. He was interested in building. Almost immediately, he invested much of his money into a new idea, online banking. At a time when many people still didn't trust the internet, the idea of moving money online sounded risky. To some, it sounded ridiculous. That company became X.com. Not long afterward, it merged with another fast-growing startup. The new company would eventually become PayPal. Its mission was simple: make sending money over the internet easy. The company grew rapidly, but success didn't mean everything was smooth. There were disagreements inside the company, different opinions about leadership, and debates over the future of the business. Eventually, Elon was replaced as chief executive officer. For many entrepreneurs, that might have been the end of the story. Instead, it became another lesson. In 2002, PayPal was acquired by eBay. The deal was worth $1.5 billion. As one of the company's largest shareholders, Elon walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars before taxes. He was only 31 years old. He had more money than most people could spend in several lifetimes. He could have retired, bought islands, collected sports cars, lived quietly. Instead, he did something almost nobody expected. He decided to risk it all, not on one company, but on several. First, space. In 2002, he founded SpaceX. The goal wasn't simply to launch rockets, it was to make space travel dramatically less expensive, and one day, help make humanity a multiplanetary species. Many experts dismissed the idea. Private companies weren't supposed to compete with national space agencies. Building rockets was considered one of the hardest engineering challenges on Earth. Failure was expected. Then, cars. Not ordinary cars. Electric cars. At the time, many people believed electric vehicles were slow, boring, and impractical. Elon believed they could be fast, beautiful, and desirable. He became deeply involved with Tesla, investing millions of his own money and eventually taking a leadership role. Then came another company, Solar City, focused on expanding solar energy. Years later, another, Neuralink. Then, the Boring Company. One ambitious project after another, one impossible idea after another. From the outside, it looked fearless, but behind the scenes, the pressure was building. Then came 2008, a year Elon Musk has described as one of the hardest periods of his life. The global financial crisis hit. Investors became cautious. Money became harder to find. Tesla was burning through cash. SpaceX had already suffered multiple failed rocket launches. Each failure cost millions of dollars. Each explosion brought the company closer to collapse. According to Musk's own public accounts, he was running out of money. He later said he had to choose carefully which company would receive the little funding he had left. Friends and colleagues have described the pressure as enormous. The companies were struggling. His personal life was also going through major changes. Everything seemed to be happening at once. Many believed it was over. Some predicted SpaceX would never reach orbit. Others believed Tesla would become just another failed startup. Years of work, billions of dollars, and thousands of jobs appeared to be hanging by a thread. Then came one final chance, one final rocket. If this launch failed, many believed SpaceX might not survive, and if SpaceX fell, Tesla might not be far behind. Everything had come down to a single moment, one launch that could change everything. On September 28, 2008, after 3 failed attempts, SpaceX launched the Falcon 1 rocket for a 4th time. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Years of work, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the future of the company all depended on what happened next. As the countdown reached 0, the engines ignited. The rocket lifted from the launch pad, climbing higher and higher. Inside mission control, there was almost complete silence. Engineers stared at their monitors, waiting. Then, confirmation arrived. Falcon 1 had successfully reached orbit. For the first time in history, a privately developed liquid-fueled rocket had reached Earth orbit. Mission control erupted. Engineers embraced. Some cheered. Others simply stood there, trying to process what had just happened. SpaceX had survived. Just a few months later, NASA awarded the company a contract worth more than $1 billion, giving SpaceX the opportunity it desperately needed. At the same time, Tesla was still fighting for its future. Production delays, financial pressure, and relentless skepticism continued to threaten the company. Many believed electric cars would never become mainstream, but Tesla kept improving. Then, in 2012, the Model S arrived. It wasn't just another electric car. It proved that an electric vehicle could be fast, beautiful, and desirable. The automotive industry could no longer ignore the shift. Meanwhile, SpaceX set its sights on another impossible goal: reusable rockets. For decades, rocket boosters had been used once and discarded. SpaceX wanted to land them safely and fly them again. Many experts doubted it could be done. Then, the world watched as a rocket booster descended from the sky, slowed itself, and landed upright. What once sounded like science fiction had become reality. SpaceX continued breaking new ground, launching astronauts into orbit, deploying thousands of satellites, and developing the largest rocket ever built. Tesla expanded across the world. Its factories grew. Its vehicles became a common sight on roads across multiple continents. And Elon Musk became the richest person on Earth. The quiet boy from Pretoria, who once escaped into books, had become one of the most influential people alive. To millions, he represented innovation, ambition, and the belief that impossible problems could be solved. But success brought something else. The bigger Elon Musk became, the more closely the world watched. Every interview made headlines. Every business decision was analyzed. Every post online sparked debate. The admiration kept growing, but so did the criticism. And before long, the conversation about Elon Musk was no longer just about rockets or electric cars. It had become something much bigger. Success has a way of changing how the world sees you. As Elon Musk became richer, more influential, and impossible to ignore, every word, every decision, and every mistake came under intense scrutiny. The criticism didn't begin because of one event. It grew over time, one controversy after another. For some people, it started with social media. Unlike most business leaders, Elon often spoke directly to millions of people online. Sometimes his posts were humorous. Sometimes they announced major business news. Sometimes they sparked fierce debate. Supporters saw someone who spoke his mind without relying on carefully written corporate statements. Critics argued that someone leading several major companies should communicate more carefully especially when a single post could dominate headlines around the world. Then, there was his leadership style. Many former employees have described demanding workloads, long hours, and extremely high expectations. Others have said those same expectations helped achieve things many believed were impossible. To supporters, he pushed people to do extraordinary work. To critics, he pushed them too far. Then came politics. Over the years, Elon became increasingly outspoken about political and social issues. Some people appreciated his willingness to express his opinions. Others believed his growing influence made those opinions far more consequential. His supporters grew louder. His critics grew louder too. Then there was his wealth. As Tesla's value soared, Elon Musk became, at times, the richest person on Earth. To supporters, his fortune reflected the companies he had helped build. To critics, it became a symbol of growing inequality and the influence billionaires can have over society. Then came one of his most controversial decisions, the acquisition of Twitter, later renamed X. Supporters believed he was protecting free expression and reshaping the platform. Critics argued some of the changes made the platform less effective at addressing misinformation and abusive content. Once again, the world was divided. By now, something had changed. Elon Musk was no longer viewed as just an entrepreneur. He had become a symbol. To some, a symbol of innovation. To others, a symbol of controversy. Supporters defended him passionately. Critics challenged him just as passionately. Both sides looked at the same person and saw completely different things. But here's the interesting part. Despite the criticism, millions continued buying Tesla vehicles. SpaceX continued winning major contracts and launching missions. His companies continued shaping industries. So, if so many people criticized Elon Musk, why did so many others continue believing in him? To answer that, we have to look at the other side of the story. If you ask Elon Musk's critics, they'll tell you he has too much influence. If you ask his supporters, they'll tell you he earned it. Because whether people admire him or criticize him, few would deny that his companies have changed entire industries. Take electric cars. Before Tesla, many people believed electric vehicles would never become mainstream. Tesla helped change that perception. Its success pushed much of the automotive industry to accelerate the transition toward electric vehicles. Then there's SpaceX. For decades, launching rockets was expensive, and most boosters were used only once. SpaceX proved that rockets could return, land safely, and fly again. A breakthrough that dramatically changed the economics of spaceflight. Then came Starlink, a growing satellite network bringing internet access to remote communities, ships at sea, and areas where traditional infrastructure is difficult to build. Supporters point to these achievements as evidence that Elon Musk isn't just building companies. He's pushing technology forward. Even his ambitious projects, from artificial intelligence to brain-computer interfaces, reflect a willingness to pursue ideas others consider impossible. Of course, none of this erases the criticism. Innovation doesn't excuse controversy, and success doesn't place anyone beyond accountability. That's what makes Elon Musk such a difficult person to define. To some, he's a visionary. To others, he's a billionaire with too much influence. Perhaps he's a little of both. And maybe that's been the real story all along. Not whether Elon Musk is loved or hated, but why one person can inspire both at the very same time. Which leaves us with one final question. How will history remember him? History has a funny way of judging people. The biggest innovators are often the most controversial. admired by some, criticized by others. Sometimes, both at the same time. Elon Musk may be no different. To some, he's the entrepreneur who helped accelerate electric vehicles, revolutionize commercial spaceflight, and inspire a new generation to think bigger. To others, he's a billionaire whose influence extends far beyond business, a man whose words can shape conversations, move markets, and divide public opinion. Both perspectives exist, and both are part of his story. The truth is, Elon Musk isn't easy to define. People don't judge him only by what he builds. They judge him by what they value. Some admire bold ambition, even when it comes with enormous risks. Others believe great influence demands even greater responsibility. Neither side is likely to change its mind anytime soon. So, why do so many people hate Elon Musk? There isn't one answer. For some, it's his public statements. For others, it's his leadership style, his politics, his wealth, or simply what he represents. And why do millions admire him? Because they see someone willing to pursue problems most people considered impossible. A man who repeatedly risked failure to build technologies that changed entire industries. Whether those achievements outweigh the controversies is something each person must decide for themselves. But one thing is difficult to argue with. Very few people have shaped conversations about transportation, space, artificial intelligence, and the future as much as Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, agree with him or disagree with him, his impact is already part of history. The only question is what that history will say. Will Elon Musk be remembered as a visionary who pushed humanity forward, as a controversial billionaire who divided public opinion, or as something far more complicated than either label could ever describe? Only time will decide. The story of Elon Musk isn't finished. Every year, new companies, new technologies, new controversies, and new achievements continue to shape his legacy. That's what makes him so difficult to define. Because while some see a man driven by ego, others see a man driven by impossible ideas. While some believe he's become too powerful, others believe he's using that power to push humanity forward. Perhaps both sides are seeing part of the truth. History has a way of revealing the full picture only after the noise has faded. For now, the debates continue. The opinions grow stronger and the headlines keep coming. But regardless of where you stand, one thing is hard to deny. Elon Musk has changed industries, challenged expectations, and influenced conversations that will shape the future for years to come. Whether history remembers him as a visionary, a controversial billionaire, or something in between, isn't for today's headlines to decide. It's for future generations. Because in the end, history always has the final word. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more deep dives, and let us know in the comments. How do you think history will remember Elon Musk?